An array is a collection of values all wrapped up and given a name. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, we already know how to create one variable at a time. We use the word var, we give it a name, and then we can use the equal sign to give that variable a value. That could be a letter, could be a number, it could be a string, it could be a boolean, but it's one value. Now, an array is the idea of multiple values, but all contained in one named variable, such as this one. We have a variable called myArray with multiple values in it. It's a great way to keep data together that belongs together, to keep dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of pieces of information together without having to name every single individual piece as an individual variable. But before we make one, here's a couple of concepts. See, if all we have is one name for this entire array, how do we get individual pieces in or out? Well, in an array, each individual value, often referred to as an element, has a number, an index, that identifies where it is in the array. Arrays have an internal order. They don't shuffle their values around randomly. So the first slot has an index of 0. The second slot, or second position, has an index of 1. Third slot is 2, and so on. So I've got an array with 7 elements in it here. But there's no minimum or maximum size. You can make arrays as big as you need them. You're simply limited by the amount of memory you have available. In JavaScript, like most languages these days, arrays are zero-based. And that means the first position, the first element in the array is considered to be at position 0, not position 1. Some languages, like older versions of Visual Basic, used 1-based arrays, but 0-based arrays are far more common. So we can use that number, that index, to either set that value or to get to that value. So I need to use both the name of the array and the index of the element to access any one part of the array. So let's make one. In JavaScript, we can make the variable the same way we always do it, but we need to tell JavaScript this is an array. There's actually a few ways to do it, but this is the easiest one. We use the word var, and I'm going to call my variable multiple values. You can call it whatever you like. Then we'll use the equal sign, and then what we're going to use is this opening square bracket and closing square bracket. And this is the indicator that we're dealing with an array, not a single value. When you see those square brackets in JavaScript, it's a pretty good sign you've got an array somewhere. So this line and these characters here simply creates a single variable called multiple values that you can put a bunch of stuff inside. Well, how do you do that? How do I get to the individual elements of that array? I use the square brackets again. So if I want this array to hold multiple values, we need to be able to say which element of the array are we trying to get to. So we use the index. So here's an example. I use the name of the variable, but instead of just saying equals, I'm using those square brackets again. I'm saying here, I want the element at position 0 to be set to the value 50. And I want the element at position 1 to be set to the value 60. I can say I want the element at position 2 to be equal to the word hello. And notice that what I can do in this array is I can put in a number, I can put in a string, I could also put in a boolean, I can actually put anything in there. It doesn't matter what kind of data you're putting in at the different slots in the array, but all of them are accessed using that index. And that's whether you're setting these values or whether you're getting these values. It's always the zero-based index. Now what we can then do is use the same format to get to the contents of the array. So if, for example, I want to write out an alert message with whatever's at the second position, I use the square brackets. I use the same way to access them and to set them. And it writes out the word hello in this case. So if this is the way that we write arrays, it's okay. It's not too bad, but it would be nice if there was something a little quicker. And in fact, there is. There's a shorthand method for doing it. So instead of doing it over several statements like this, we can use those square brackets and combine all this stuff onto one line. We can just load this array up with the initial values. In this case, 50, 60, hello in double quotes. and it will automatically create an array and put them in at position 0, position 1, position 2. You could then come along and add position 3, position 4, and so on, but it's always a zero-based index. Now, arrays are found in every language, and as we'll see, there are other ways of grouping values together. Sometimes you might not want a zero-based index, but perhaps a letter-based index, or some other way of accessing the elements of the array. And we can do that too. But these arrays are the classic way to get started with what are often referred to as collections in a programming language. And this time the buzzword really is straightforward. A collection in a programming language is simply multiple values grouped together in some way. And there are often slightly different ways of creating them across languages, but the overall concept is the same.